Sometimes a game is so good, it deserves another look. Is this one of them? What is a game review? Is it a miserable pile of secrets? Is it a cesspit of hate and lies? Well, maybe some people's are, but my old ones, looking back, were just plain awkward, and in many cases, I did not do the game any justice. Here's a great example, Symphony of the Night. I'm a big fan of the Castlevania series. I think that's pretty well known, and Symphony of the Night is kind of important. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't have the term Metroidvania. We'd just be calling those games, you know, they're kind of like Metroid, just not in space. But enough talk, let's have another look at Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This installment of the Castlevania franchise is the follow-up to 1993's Rondo of Blood, which was released 4 years prior to Symphony of the Night. Fitting as that is just how much time it takes place between the two games in story. The closing moments of Rondo are recounted in the beginning, similar to a flashback opening which happens in some film sequels. After his victory over Dracula, Richter Belmont goes missing. His friend and sister-in-law Maria Renard goes looking for him, and that's when Dracula's castle once again appears, a good 96 years ahead of schedule. Dracula's half-human son and once Belmont ally Alucard awakens after over 300 years. He enters the castle to investigate. Here he encounters Maria, who tells him of Richter's disappearance. As Alucard explores the castle, he comes across the Belmont claiming to be the new lord of this castle. But Richter isn't doing this of his own free will. Like everything else in Dracula's castle, things aren't always how they seem, and Richter is under the influence of another. The evil priest Shaft, who Richter first encountered in Rondo of Blood, takes control over the vampire hunter in a plot to resurrect his master. Something Alucard sees right through with the help of Maria. Upon breaking Shaft's curse and restoring Richter's mind, another instance of Dracula's castle appears through the mist, right above the one they are in. Alucard teleports to this inverted castle and takes the battle right to Dracula's most loyal and a number of other evil minions. If you can't already tell by this gameplay footage, I'm playing the game this time around on my Xbox 360, mainly because I'm lazy, my PS1's in storage, and I can't seem to find my PS3 controller right now. Also, my 360 seems to get along a lot better with my video capture options than my PlayStation 2 does, so that's why I went this route. If you haven't played the version on Xbox Live or PlayStation Store, it's pretty much an emulated version of the original PS1 game, with the screen shrunk down a little to preserve the aspect ratio, and a border featuring the likenesses of Alucard and Dracula. It's also missing some of the full motion video. Aside from that, it's a faithful port that plays pretty well, although I will say that controlling the game with an analog stick takes a little bit of getting used to. I could just use the D-pad, but it's a little awkward on the 360 controller. Aside from that initial getting used to the controller, it does play just fine. A little better than halfway through the production of this video, I picked up a PS4, and if you're wondering about the version of the game that is part of the Castlevania Requiem compilation, available digitally on the PS4 that came out in October this year, I can show you a little bit of that here. It does look quite a bit better. It maintains all the full motion video clips. You can choose to have the gameplay take up more of your screen. There's a choice of a number of borders, which includes no border at all. You can even add some filters or scan lines if you're into that sort of thing. It also feels a hell of a lot more natural to play it with a PlayStation-style controller. And you may have already heard that Requiem uses the alternate voice recordings, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. Prior to this game, Castlevania titles were presented as linear outings, with some games having either branching paths or some other limited ability to choose which way you want to go. The exception to this is Simon's Quest, which still has fairly linear goals set out for you. Even though you can travel somewhat freely there, you really can't visit the mansions out of order. Like many of the Castlevania titles that followed this on handhelds, this game takes place within the confines of Dracula's castle, a maze-like sprawling environment with a variety of different landscapes within. And for the most part, you're largely free to travel and explore. As you explore the castle, you will discover a number of items called relics. Many of these will enable you to traverse deeper within the castle, reaching areas that you initially could not. It can be a little confusing at times figuring out just where to go, but the more you explore, the more you look around, and take in the sights of the castle, you'll begin to notice things you didn't at first glance. For years I thought there was no way to go underwater without getting hurt. I thought it was a take on the mythology of vampires being killed by running water. It wasn't until playing the game for this video that I discovered that there's a relic called the Holy Symbol, which allows you to breathe underwater. And if you didn't know, it's a snorkel. Aside from traditional platform game style movement, Alucard can gain some relics which enable him to change form into a wolf, bat, or mist. These are all useful skills that have multiple uses. You will most likely use them frequently to aid in your travel throughout the castle and rely on them quite often. However, they do deplete your magic energy, and in some cases you may find alternate means to achieve similar goals when it comes to making your way around the castle. I remember my first time playing through the game using the super jump earned by the gravity boots relic more frequently than the bat transformation, despite the bat transformation being the easier and more efficient means of ascending into some hard to reach areas in the castle. I love games that give you the freedom to experiment and explore, games that don't hold your hand. I can understand why some may dislike games that are cryptic about their goals, but that freedom is always something that interests me. I see being able to ask myself, where can I go next, much more exciting than where do I have to go next. I love being able to make my own game just out of exploring the environment of a game. Not having any constraints preventing me from doing so makes me very happy. The game also includes a number of role-playing elements, an experience system, an inventory system, weapons, armor, and accessories which can improve statistics, and also magic spells. These magic spells are executed using controller inputs similar to the special moves in fighting games. You can purchase scrolls which show you the controller combinations required, but you do not need them to pull off the moves. You can actually look them up in a guide online or just experiment a little. Personally, I don't even bother with them at all, as the weapons you will find in the game are extremely effective and it will not hinder your experience one bit if you don't use them at all. The visual presentation of the game holds up extremely well. In general, most 2D games from the 5th generation still look damn good today, and this one is no exception. The enemy variety is a lot of fun. Sure, you have a lot of skeletons, and zombies, axe armors, bats. This is a Castlevania game after all. There are no lack of familiar enemies, especially if you've played Rondo of Blood. There's also plenty which I don't believe have appeared in any game in the series prior to this one. Bosses all have a fantastic design as well. Many of them are huge, taking up multiple screens, and the landscape of the castle is one of my favorite things about the visuals in the game. Each section of the castle looks different from the other, almost enough to feel like different levels throughout. Many of the larger rooms are really a treat for the eye. Some even include some 3D elements or multiple layers of scrolling or animations. Naturally, there are plenty of sections that are instantly familiar to a Castlevania fan. The entrance hall, the clock tower, the library, the catacombs. I don't think you can have a Castlevania game that doesn't have those areas. Also, this is the very first time that we see character art designed by Ayame Kojima, whose depiction of Alucard is just plain iconic. This is why the Castlevania series chose this design over something that more resembles his appearance from Castlevania 3. As for the sounds, I think it goes without saying that there's going to be some good music. Again, this is a Castlevania game, and most of the titles in the franchise have outstanding soundtracks. This one is no different, with many varying themes throughout the castle. One may have some exciting rock-based sounds with heavy electric guitar, and another will have something more baroque with a harpsichord as the lead instrument. Another might be more ambient and atmospheric, and all of these themes might be just divided up by nothing more than a simple hallway. Throughout the game there are a number of interludes in which the characters interact, which are all fully voiced. It's fairly well known that the translation to English of the dialogue in the original version is a bit off. This leads to some interesting phrasing by the voice actors. Some of the quotes from the game are kind of infamous right now. I mentioned earlier that the Requiem version of Symphony of the Night uses the alternative voice acting, which first appeared in the unlockable version of Symphony found on the Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles for PlayStation Portable. In fact, many of the features of the Requiem version are like a souped-up version of the PSP unlockable. The dialogue was completely rewritten and performed by a new voice cast, and while the new dialogue does make a bit more sense and comes off a little bit more dramatic, it lacks the charm of the original. Let me play for you one of the most well-known exchanges from the game. First, the original dialogue.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh. I was called here by humans who wish to pay me tribute.
Tribute? You steal men's souls and make them your slaves.
Perhaps the same could be said of all religions.
Your words are as empty as your soul. Mankind ill needs a savior such as you.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. Have at you!
And now the alternative version.
Dracula, die now and leave this world. You'll never belong here.
Oh, but this world invited me. Your own kind called me forth with praise and tribute.
Tribute? You're a thief. You steal men's souls, their freedom.
Freedom is always sacrificed to faith, good hunter. Or are you truly here by choice?
All I'm here for is you. To hell with your heresy! You're nothing but a blight on mankind.
Ha! Mankind! A cesspit of hatred and lies! Fight for them, and die for their sins!
And it's not just the dialogue which has changed, as many of the other voice effects such as grunts and groans and screams, and even the game over voice has all been replaced here. And unless my ears might be playing some tricks on me, I believe some of the other non-voice sound effects may have been altered as well. I haven't beaten the Requiem version of the game just yet, but on the digital version that you've been watching me play for most of this review, the ending omits the song I Am the Wind, which plays over the credits in the original, but if you're not already familiar, you're not really missing out there. One of the biggest qualms of critics of the game is that as you play on and find the best weapons and armor, the game gets just too easy. I related this before as just being more badass and better equipped for battle, and the game really rewards exploration more than anything. In fact, there's an item in the game known as the walk armor. When you first pick it up, it's not really anything all that special, but by the time you make it to the end of the game, it is far and above all the other armor types within the game. As for the weapons in the game, there are several that can make the final battles of the game feel completely inconsequential. Death, piece of cake. Shaft, effortless. And Dracula, I didn't even break a sweat. Whether you think of that as a bad thing or not is completely up to you. Some of these weapons are dropped by enemies completely at random, and even finding them and using them is completely optional to you, but anyone dead set on finding everything in the game is going to be able to waltz through the bosses like they were nothing. I feel that no video game is perfect, this included, but Symphony of the Night has never failed to suck me in, even more so than other titles in the series with much better balance to their difficulty and even a little more depth. But I might be a little bit biased as I've gone on record in the past as calling this my favorite video game. No matter how much I play it, no matter how many times I've beaten it, I still notice things that I haven't before, and there's a lot to enjoy about this one, if you ask me. I've always really enjoyed this game, I still do. Even the Requiem version, yes, you've got the alternative dialogue and some may really dislike that. I think it's a fair trade-off because the game looks and plays so good. They did clean things up quite a bit, if you ask me. And either way, recommend the hell out of it. If you've never played it, check it out. If you have, check it out again. This game's definitely worthy of another look. And I know that a physical copy nowadays, not cheap. Black labels are going for as much as $100 according to game value now. $60 for the green label. That's quite a bit more than what I paid way back when. It's a great thing that we have the digital copies like you've been seeing me play for this review. That one that's on the Xbox 360 and PS3, that's only around $10, and Requiem will set you back around $20 for the PS4. That of course comes with Rondo of Blood. Speaking of Rondo of Blood, of course you've got the Dracula X Chronicles on the PlayStation Portable. You can probably download that on the PlayStation Network for other consoles too, probably at least the Vita or others. Not so sure about that. But still, if you have a PSP, that's a pretty cheap pickup too, if you look for that. And heck, let me just throw the ball over to you guys now. What are your favorite Metroidvania type games? Don't have to be a Castlevania one. There's so many great indie titles that use this style now, so let me know your favorites. Leave a comment down below. Love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, especially since this video is quite a bit longer than most of what I do, and it's a hell of a lot longer than my original review of this game. If you haven't seen that, don't even worry about it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.